Hello everyone and welcome to a very nice game that was played in the New York Park where a lot of people get together to play chess. It's a game between a hooded gentleman, I do not know his identity, and FIDE master Adewumi Tanitoluwa, also known as Tani. And it's quite a game where the King's Gambit is basically refuted. It's not refuted at its core because of course you can play it, but you will, if you face the King's Gambit quite a lot, and if you struggle with it, maybe you can use this in your own games. And Bobby Fischer even he wrote an article after he lost to Boris Spassky. If you remember, we've covered the game. If you haven't seen it, do check it out. I will put also a link to that game in the description below, how Boris Spassky defeated Bobby Fischer in their first ever game using the King's Gambit. And then Bobby wrote this article saying that the King's Gambit is a terrible opening, that it just loses by force, and then he sort of refuted it. So if you're interested in Bobby Fischer's analysis of the opening, it will also be in the description below. Probably second thing you will see. And also the third thing you will see in the description is the actual video of them playing this game, if you guys want to see them in action. I do suggest you watch it. It's a blitz game, so it doesn't take a whole lot of your time. But there is quite a lot to enjoy, and there are many hidden lines here that you guys will appreciate. So let's dive straight into it. The hooded gentleman has the white pieces, and he opens with e4. We have e5, and as advertised, the King's Gambit is on the board. Pawn to f4. We have e captures on f4, knight to f3, and now in that article, if you click on it, Bobby Fischer suggests pawn to d6 as the best way to treat the King's Gambit, sort of a waiting move, and then, well, read his analysis if you guys are into that. But yeah, there are many good moves here. Today, the most common way of treating this is the way it was treated in the old days, basically in the era of Morphy and Anderson. G5 is the serious attempt at refuting the Gambit, and it can be played. But Tani goes for knight to e7, and it's also one of the most annoying lines to play against, because black gets the Qb4 pawn. Usually white will just develop the knight, play d4, and recapture the pawn with bishop captures on f4. But now, after pawn to d4, we have knight to g6, just defending the pawn on f4. We have knight to c3 now, and just bishop to e7. And if you want, you could maybe try something like pawn to h4. If you want to try to kick away the knight, then black will just play pawn to h5. And if you try something like knight to e2, you want to go after the pawn here, then you just allow black to really develop. Pawn to d5 attacks the e4 pawn, and then after e5, this bishop to h4 is now quite a problem for you. In some lines, you can even play g3, but this is not one of them. For example, g3, f captures on g3, and now if h captures, you're just going to bring the bishop back, bishop to e7, and you haven't recaptured the pawn, you've just messed up your pawn structure, and black will have an okay game. This is not lost for white by force, but it will give black a very decent game. So instead, after bishop to e7, the hooded gentleman continues with bishop to c4. If you by any chance know who this is, do mention in the comments, so you know everyone knows, but I was unable to find out. And here we have castles, just castling the king to safety. Castles by black, and although now bishop to h4 check is possible, and now it would be pretty bad. I'm just going to show it to you because it's super fun. If bishop to h4 check, g3, you're gonna capture on g3. Now bishop captures on g3, but after king to e2, now the g file is also open, and with the h file open, the g file open, the bishop on this diagonal, this is sort of a dream position for white when playing the King's Gambit. For example, castles, bishop, g5, you cannot push the f1, you have to play queen to e8. Now comes queen to g1, and after the bishop moves, let's say bishop f4, knight captures, bishop captures, knight captures with check, king d2. Now look at this, the rook controls h file, queen controls the g file, bishop controls this diagonal, the knights are beautifully placed, the other rook is coming to f1. This is completely winning for white. There is no playing this position. So instead, after bishop to c4, like we said, Tani just castles. We have castles by the hooded gentleman, and now pawn to d6. We have knight to d5, sort of breaking opening principles here, moving the same piece twice out of the opening, but you want to win the bishop pair, so it's justified. Bishop to e6, and now queen to e2, developing the queen, and also now if the bishop moves, then If the knight moves, the bishop on c4 will be defended. So here Tani gives up the light square bishop, bishop captures, and now he plays c6. Further chases away the bishop, bishop to b3, and now knight to d7. You have to continue development, and now pawn to c4. This is a positional error by white. Yes, you want to control the center, but not too much center. Here, by playing pawn to c3, you would actually have more control over the center, because after black plays c5, you don't have to worry about your pawn on d4 being removed. Here, after pawn to c4, Tani immediately challenges it with c5, and now d4 pawn will fall. You can play d5, but that's just bad. Your light square bishop is just terrible here, and well, you've given up the e5 square for the black knight. That's not really good. So bishop to d2, white just continues development, c captures on d4, knight captures, and now queen to b6 makes sense as the diagonal has now opened up. Bishop to c3, defending the knight, and now bishop to f6, piling up on the d4 knight, rook a to d1, and now rook a to e8. You could also consider a move like knight to c5 or bishop to e5, but Tani goes for rook to e8. And now, okay, if bishop to e4, this could be annoying, but you can just move the rook to e7, so it's not a problem. We have queen to g4, and now we have knight d to e5, going after the queen here, even though it seems like your knight here is hanging, so you have to move it, but just for fun, I will show you rook captures on e4 can be played. And now if queen captures on d7, you will just play bishop captures on d4. And after bishop captures, rook captures, now you are threatening all sorts of nasty discoveries, so the king will have to move. You're going to play rook captures, and now play something like queen to f2, and you don't really have time to go after the d6 pawn, as f3 is coming, and you are just lost here as white. So after queen g4, knight d to e5 by Tani, going after the queen, and this is a blitz game. I'm only showing you these extra lines for your entertainment. Queen back to e2, and now you could play a lot of moves here, like knight can come back to c6. You could start advancing with pawn to h5, but Tani goes pawn to f3, and it makes sense. You want to really free up this f4 square for the knight to go after the queen. G captures on f3. Notice that the knight cannot capture, even though if you check out the video in the description, the hooded gentleman actually picks up the knight, and he wanted to grab the f3 pawn with the knight, but then he realizes that he can't, even though it would be a great move. So G captures on f3, knight to f4 now. Now you can see how the how black's pieces are starting to pile up in front of the white king. Queen to d2, going after the knight, and now look at this, knight e to d3, and it looks very scary. Now this knight cannot move because this knight hangs, this knight cannot move because this knight hangs, but you are not in time to attack the knight because your knight on d4 is hanging, so you have to first tend to that. So queen to e3, and now knight to h3 with check. King g2, you could also play king h1, but black's move is the same, so knight d comes to f4 with check. King to h1, and now queen to c5, preparing to shift the queen over to the king side. Notice how the knights are covering g1 and g2 squares, so you can't really put the rook on the semi-open g file, and the black is free to just mount the attack as slowly as he wants. So knight to c2, offering a queen trade, but Tani just declines. We have queen to g5, rook to d2. Now you have to defend against the mate threat with queen to g2. So rook to d2, and now bishop captures on c3, and this is a beautiful move, because your bishop here is one of the few pieces that is not involved in the attack. The knights are attacking the white king, the queen is very nicely placed. The bishop, however, not attacking the king on h1, and also you're just in the way of a nice rook lift. Imagine rook e6, rook to g6, putting even more pressure on that king's side. So bishop captures on c3, giving up your bishop that's not really doing all that much for white's very, very strong dark square bishop. So b captures on c3, and now I know you guys know what's coming. Rook to e6, a very nice rook lift, and now comes knight to e1. Here, if you try c5, it looks like it could be something. You open up a discovery on the rook. It doesn't really matter, just rook h6 or something. And if c captures on d6, you can just recapture. I mean, the rook still cannot move because of this checkmate, and you only helped black develop. So instead, after rook to e6, knight to e1, a very nice move, as it also covers the g2 square, and now comes rook to g6. We have pawn to c5, you have to play something, and white is pretty much out of moves. D captures on c5, and now bishop to d5, going after the b7 pawn, and now Tani just plays h5. You want to give your king some breathing room here on h7, so you don't have to worry about any back rank issues. Bishop captures on b7. The move doesn't really achieve all that much. You grab a pawn, but what you really do is allow Tani to activate his last piece, and that is the rook on f8. Rook to b8 now attacks the bishop on b7, bishop to d5, and now rook to b1. And look at this now. Every piece of Tani's is attacking the white king, and if white makes even a slight imprecision, it is game over. Black is completely winning whatever white does, but just to give you an example of what's hidden in the position, let's say you play a3. What are the threats here? There are so many threats here. I'm just going to show you the ones that are the most fun. Look at this, knight to d3. What is this? What kind of a move is this? The knight can be captured by the knight, by the rook, and by the queen, but whatever you do, you are just getting checkmate in most devious ways possible. Look at this. If knight captures on d3, then comes rook captures on f1 with check. You have to block, queen to g1, and then just rook captures on g1, or queen captures on g1 will deliver checkmate. So obviously the knight cannot move. What happens if rook captures? Well, then you've lost one of the defenders of the g2 square, and now look at this, a beautiful queen sacrifice. Queen to g2 check, knight captures on g2. Now look at this, rook captures on f1 with check, only move queen to g1, and now this spectacular smothered mate fork combo. I mean, this is just absolutely spectacular. I don't think we've ever had like a smothered mate fork combo. This is beautiful stuff. So that's what happens if the rook captures. If the queen captures the knight, then comes queen to g1 check. Another very nice sacrifice. Rook captures, and then just rook captures on g1 will be checkmate. And of course, now that you see that the knight cannot be captured, you might think, well, let's just trade queens. Obviously, you're not gonna checkmate me if I trade queens. Yes, he is. If queen captures on g5, you're just going to recapture, and whatever white does, it's still checkmate. Again, if something like a rook captures on d3, the queen isn't really needed. Knight to f2 with check, you even sacrifice the knight. Rook captures on f2, rook captures on e1 with check, and now only move is rook to f1, followed by rook captures on f1 checkmate, as this rook covers the g2 square. So after this rook to b1 move, those are the threats in the position. If white doesn't find some miraculous move that solves all of this, which of course did not happen, as it's impossible, so white decided to go out swinging. He didn't want to, just surrender here. He played bishop captures on f7, king captures on f7, and now rook to d8. Rook to d8. And here Tani thought about the position for a few seconds, and then he just captured the free rook as the hooded gentleman blundered an entire rook. And he was in this position on move 33 that the hooded gentleman resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. It's mate in whatever you want, whenever you want it. But when you will be retelling the story of this game and maybe even showing it to your friends in the bar and the library, you can also show queen to g2 check, as the smothered mate is still possible. Knight captures on g2, rook captures on f1, queen to g1, and now again the beautiful finish, knight to f2, a beautiful smothered checkmate. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you struggle against the King's Gambit, and there are many ways of dealing with the King's Gambit, you could accept it. You could go for the folk bear counter gambit. You could just play the main line with advancing the h pawn like we've discussed, but also this e captures on f4, knight f3, and knight to e7 can be really troublesome for white, as once this d4 move is played, white will struggle. I mean, it's just people who play the King's Gambit on a club level player. They are very much used to playing d4, e4, knight f3, and then just recapturing the pawn on f4. With you playing knight e7, knight to g6, yes, you've spent 2 moves developing your knight, but then your opponent will be like, but yeah, what do I do now? It's very unclear. So yeah, maybe if you guys like it, you can try it in your own games and hopefully win some nice ones as well. As you've seen that it's possible. Tani really played a beautiful game here, and the Hooded Gentleman really played a very strong game as well. I mean, it wasn't until maybe like move 25 that he did his first, not a blunder, but first inaccuracy. So I mean, even when the position was completely crazy, the engine said it was like 0.00. So it's a fun opening, but it doesn't seem that you risk all that much. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for suggesting such a lovely game. Like I said, in the description you can check out Fischer's game versus Spassky. In the King's Gambit you can check out Bobby Fischer's article about the King's Gambit after he lost that game to Spassky, and also you can check out the actual footage of this game. Those will be the first 3 links in the description below. So if you have some extra time, do check it out. Not a bad way to spend the day. So yeah, once again, really hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Jack Obid, Goncalo Marovo, Martin Georg Paparik, Sofus Ferreson Fine, and Sashari Subramanian for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions, such as this one, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.